Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy Mr. Omari Lewis back at you with another video. Oh yeah! And today we're going to be talking about the places where you should not be taking advice from, because advice is amazing. It's so helpful. It can push you in the right direction, but if it's coming from the wrong places, then it's going to do the complete opposite, and that's not what I want for you. So I want to teach you the wrong places where you should not be taking advice from, and the correct places where you should be taking advice from. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with today's video, because today's video is very, very important. So I've actually noted these down on my phone. So the first place that you should not be taking advice from is online. So here's the thing, like you have things like social media, you have things like, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and there's a number of people on there that are trying to give you advice, whether it's through a post, whether it's through like a story, a little meme here and there, little motivational quote and stuff like that, right? Maybe on the description of the post there's something that's along the lines of some sort of advice, right? So here's my problem with online advice. The problem is that pretty much everybody has access to these platforms. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, these are all free platforms. Anybody can just decide to jump into one of these platforms and start saying whatever it is that they want to say, right? Including this platform here on YouTube. So anybody can just jump into these platforms. There is no high degree of entry. It's not like you have to sign up or anything, or there's any sort of special requirements, that are required in order for you to jump into these platforms. Much less, these platforms aren't necessarily filtered to filter out bad advice from good advice. They do make sure that the really bad stuff doesn't get on these platforms, but for the most part they're not telling you this is the good advice, this is the bad one. So anybody with an idea, anybody with an opinion can just jump in there and start giving you advice. And so what ends up happening is that usually when you need advice, you're in a bad position, you're in a place of desperation, right? You're craving some advice, you're craving some sort of guidance that takes you in the right direction. Maybe right now you're feeling like life isn't necessarily to your liking, things are just not happening, things are just not going right, and so you feel a little bit desperate, you feel a little bit anxious, and you want some advice, but and so you probably use social media a lot. So you're scrolling through your posts and then you see a friend or something, they post something that's supposed to be inspirational, and then you just go and you either feel good about it and you don't take action, or perhaps it motivates you to go take some sort of action, but probably you didn't quite understand the message of the quote, what it actually meant, and under what circumstances can it be applied, which is the most important thing, and that's not addressed with social media and online advice in general, is that it's not very clear as to where it's supposed to be used, because every single piece of advice is meant to be used at a specific stage in your life. So perhaps right now you need maybe it's an advice on how to overcome laziness, right? So maybe you're struggling with laziness at a massive level, so you've never actually experienced what it's like to feel motivated, to feel inspired, to have a purpose, to have some sort of have something to accomplish, right? So because of that, you're experiencing laziness, and so that's a whole different person as opposed to somebody who has experienced that, but now is in a place where they have something, they have a purpose, they have something to accomplish, and they still experience laziness. So that's a whole different dynamic there, and these two people need to be addressed a little bit differently as far as how to overcome their laziness, because it's not coming from the right place for both. One person needs to find their purpose and something to go after. The other person has to either rethink why this purpose even matters for that person, or completely shift and look for another purpose, which can be a little bit tough, because perhaps you've already invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy into this purpose, and you don't want to drop it. So you feel like you need to finish that, but at the same time you're just not feeling it, and so that's causing a little bit of laziness inside you. So yeah, so a post from online saying that, oh, stop being lazy, you only have you never know how much time you have left in this world, or something along those lines, right? While it is true, you don't know how much time you have left on this earth, that's not extremely helpful to overcome laziness. That's not really going to do anything. It's not going to really push you into doing anything, because there is no practicality in that. There's no structure, which is another thing that online advice doesn't very do well. It's just very generic, very Go do, you know, everything's in your hands, everything's in your power. Whatever you manifest will come to you. All this bullshit, to be honest. It's all bullshit because it's all just nice little words put together that don't necessarily inspire you to go and take action. It's more about complacency. It's more about you just feeling better about yourself, you feeling like you're not the only one going through this in the world. And sure, that might be somewhat comforting, but it's not going to fix the problem. It's not going to fix an issue that you're currently having, which is why you need the advice in the first place. Like I've always said, my definition of advice is you need the advice to either fix or improve something. So if that advice that you're receiving isn't helping you do one of those, it's not helping you fix or improve something, then it's bad advice. In general, it's bad advice. Now, obviously, I'll go deeper into this in my book, Stop Taking Bad Advice, which if you want to download, there'll be a link down below. But yeah, so that's the first piece of advice. Do not take advice from online. It's just bad. So the second place you shouldn't be taking advice from. And now this one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to be looking at my phone a little bit just so I don't lose track. Don't take advice from non-experts, from non-experienced people, and from non-smart people. So here's the thing. Sometimes you do need to take advice from people who haven't necessarily gone through what you've gone through. And that's perfectly okay. Sometimes all there is someone to take advice from someone who's just an expert. So here's the thing, like obviously every industry, every field has an expert. So maybe you need help, you know, getting better at programming, right? So then, you know, going to an expert programmer, someone who's spent a lot of time in the field and also has studied and put in the work, maybe has a few certifications here and there, and so he's clearly qualified to help you out. However, these people might be a little bit hard to acquire because most experts are, you know, they're busy, they're doing their thing, they're getting paid for what they're doing, and they're getting paid a lot. And so that in of itself, that position of them being an expert requires a lot of attention. So most likely it'll be a little bit hard for you to get access to any of these experts. But if you do yourself a favor and get the advice from the experts, because the experts are the best people that you can get when it comes to acquiring advice. Non-experienced people. So these are the people that are pretty much, in my opinion, are the worst because non-experienced people are the people who maybe their experience of the thing is actually just watching, you know, being an observer. So, you know, maybe you're a basketball player, right? And so you're looking for tips on how to be more aggressive in the game, right? You want to be more aggressive. So maybe when you're attacking, right, you have an attacking position, but for some reason you're unable to attack. Maybe the opponents scare you a little bit, or you feel a little bit intimidated that you're going to attack and they're going to push back, right? And so you're looking for advice on how to mentally be more stronger with that aspect there, right? And so you go to your friend, perhaps it's usually the friends, right? You go and you ask for advice. You're like, hey man, I'm trying to be a little bit more aggressive there. And maybe your friend is aggressive. Maybe he is more aggressive in other areas, but not in basketball. But you go and you ask him, right? And he's like, hey man, why don't you, you know, and it might even sound along the lines of this, because I myself don't play basketball. I mean, I used to, but not anymore. And when I did, I was actually pretty aggressive. But, you know, I'd be like, you know, like, oh, you know, just go in like real hard, you know, just you know, remember that you got to win the game. So just focus on winning the game and focus on giving it your best, and, you know, go in there and attack, you know, like, who cares, you know, if you push back, they push back, you push back even stronger, you know, like use the motivation of that. And so, as you can see, that is very bad advice. As good as they may actually sound, it's actually bad advice. It's bad advice because I myself don't play basketball. And I'm not currently playing basketball, and I currently don't know what it's like to play basketball under those circumstances. So maybe he's a professional player. So I don't know what it's like to be in that position of playing professionally and being under the pressure of being watched by so many people and having to meet an expectation as a professional basketball player. I don't have that. So how am I supposed to tell this person how to actually do something like that if I've never even been there? I have no experience. And here's what friends typically do, you know, they try to give you advice, and they literally think that the advice that they're giving you is good. But if they've never been in such a position, how can they possibly do that? Because they're not experienced. They don't have experience. They don't have experience being in that position that you are. They've only been an observer. Perhaps your friend has watched thousands of games, thousands of basketball games, and maybe he's even played a little bit of basketball here with his friends right there in the neighborhood court. But that's just not the same as playing professionally, being watched by so many people, being paid, knowing that that's your job, knowing that your position there in the team isn't necessarily guaranteed, and you're getting paid and you have a responsibility to meet, and so you have to perform or else you'll get cut from the team or you'll be sent to the bench or something along those lines, right? And so you don't want that as a player. You want to be active. You want to show your coach that you're very well deserving of being part of the team and that you deserve to be in the starting five, for example, in this basketball example. And so non-experienced people, the worst. Do not ask non-experienced people for advice. They just don't know what they're talking about. And the last one, like I said, non-smart people. So here's the thing. There's this segment of people who perhaps they may not actually have experienced what you're going through, or they're not experts at all, but they are smart. They can be book smart people. These are people who study a lot, so they know the subject. While they may not have actually been there, they know the subject really well, and because of that, they're able to develop really concrete, smart theories that for the most part may actually turn out to be true. So here's the thing about these people. You have people like that, and then you have like the non-smart ones. So you have the people who are able to craft theories, but the theories are actually not that effective because these people aren't necessarily smart. So it's like pretty much just guessing. It's pretty much just assuming and just being able to craft something, put together something really good, but there's no actual evidence of them actually studying and spending time studying the craft. So while they may be able to come up with a nice little theory of how it could work, it doesn't necessarily work that way. But if you're able to get somebody who's able to do that, but it's also smart, they're constantly reading books and taking courses, then they totally might be worth listening to. Maybe not completely, because at the end of the day, they're not experienced either, but they can give you some sort of idea, some sort of perspective that you might have not ever seen before. And so that in of itself can be somewhat helpful if you're able to take those theories, if you're able to take all the book smart knowledge and information that they're giving you and actually try to do something with that, try to work with it and try to implement it here and there, right? Because at least they've read the book. So you can treat these smart people as sort of a compilation of all the books, so instead of you having to go and do all the work of reading every single book individually, you can just ask this person who's already read all the books, and they can pretty much just give you the golden nuggets, the good stuff about all these books, and then you can put that into perspective in your own mind and apply it. And so this is way better than actually listening to someone who just comes up with theories, or someone who's just not experienced and all they're giving you is opinions and their thoughts about the matter because they just have nothing better to do, really. And so so this is pretty much the second little group of people you don't want to be taking advice from: non-experts, non-experienced people, and non-smart people. The next type of advice you don't want to be listening to is fear-based advice. So here's the thing, like you may be asking advice to somebody who's already fearful about the thing that you're asking them about. So, a good thing could be like, maybe you need advice as far as like you want to join the soccer team or something, right? So you want to go in there, you want to apply to become part of a soccer team, but then you're asking somebody who's tried to apply to a soccer team and actually failed, and maybe they failed multiple times, maybe they got rejected because so and so happened, right? They just didn't perform really well in the tryouts, and so they just didn't make it into the team. And so now you going and asking that person if you should join a soccer team, an official soccer team, might not be a good idea, because they may be really hurt as far as like the rejection that they received when they went and they tried out and they tried to do their best and they really tried to make it happen, but it just didn't. And so they have that little bit of fear. They don't want you to go through that, so they'll give you advice that's more fear-based, and so they'll just try to avoid you getting hurt. So they'll probably tell you to not do that. Don't try to join a soccer team. Why don't you try another sport, or why don't you try doing some other activity because soccer, they might tell you like, oh, it's really hard, it takes a lot of practice, or like the people qualifying the players into the team, they suck, they don't know what they're doing, they're not really vetting the players correctly, and so they might tell you they might give you all these excuses and all this advice that's pretty much just fear-based. And this is really bad because it's not really your fear, it's their fear that's being put into you. And if you decide to not do it because your friend told you to not do it because you can get rejected, you can get cut, you can it might just not happen, that's bad advice. Because the thing is, that could happen. I'm not saying that it won't happen, but it may not happen for you actually. Because who knows, maybe you're a better player than he is, or maybe you're able to demonstrate your skills a whole lot better to the person signing up the players to the team. You might be able to impress that person a whole lot better than your friend did, and so you don't know that. So the best advice here would be to actually go for it. But you would have to ask somebody who's experienced, somebody who's actually gone through that journey and actually successfully made it through into a team at some point, and actually performed in the team. And then what happens next after you actually make it into the team? Because making it into the team is one thing, actually staying in the team is a whole different thing. And so that's the thing there, a really short one here, but fear-based advice has to go. So the person that you're asking for, a good way to check this is, has this person actually even gone through, like, have they succeeded in what you're trying to do, which I will talk about later. But have they actually succeeded? Have they actually made it through? So if you wanna ask somebody for advice if you should join a soccer team, you should ask somebody who's actually been in a soccer team, who actually went into it and tried it out and did what they did, and maybe they even acquired very good success in joining that soccer team, and they got something really amazing out of it. So that's probably the person you want to be asking, not somebody who's hasn't made it, they're bitter, or who knows, maybe they made it in and then they just got cut because they weren't good enough, so now they're just like very bitter towards the sport in general. You don't want to be asking those people. Fear-based advice has to go. All right, so the next piece of advice you should not be listening to is the one that does not inspire you. Okay, so this can be the advice itself that doesn't inspire you, or the person themselves don't inspire you. So this is a very big one for me, because I only take advice from people who actually inspire me. And who inspires me? Well, the people who've actually succeeded at the thing that I want to succeed at. So you don't want to be asking for advice to people who haven't yet succeeded in what you want to do, as good as these people are. And here's the thing, like, this is something that a lot of people don't want to do, because sometimes the people giving them advice are their friends, their family. These are close people. These are people that perhaps you care about a lot and you love these people, but at the same time, you just gotta throw their advice out the window, because it's most likely shit. Because they're just, while they may be your friends, they're not exactly inspiring. They're not exactly an image of success. They're not somebody who has actually gone through your journey and successfully came out on the other side. These are people that have good intentions, and they may have good theories and good opinions, but they have no experience, they have no knowledge about what you're trying to do. So these people must be discarded as far as like you considering them to give you advice, because they've never gone through the thing that you're going through. And so because of that, they're just not inspiring enough. And that's okay. You don't have to be inspired by your family, by your friends, by your significant other. You just don't have to, because at the end of the day, everyone is pursuing their own thing, and so that's how it should be. And so perhaps the thing that you're pursuing, none of the people around you are pursuing the same thing, so it just doesn't make any sense for you to try to get advice from these people, because they just have not successfully gone through something that you're trying to go through. And because of that, that doesn't make them somebody that you aspire to be. So only take advice from people that you're inspired to actually role model, so obviously these people might be a little bit hard to acquire, so the best thing you can do here is take their courses. Usually they have some sort of course that they offer, teaching what they've learned throughout the years and how you can now implement that. Of course, the course itself isn't necessarily magic pill or anything like that. It's not like you're going to take the course and automatically you're going to get the success that they did. Obviously, you have to go take the course, take it seriously, and actually implement it, and take the course in a structured form. So don't be skipping steps when it comes to the course. You know, do whatever you have to do first, and then do the more advanced things later. Don't try to skip things. I know a lot of people like to skip things when it comes to these courses because they want to get right straight into the glory and the victory, but that's just not how it works. You have to go through all the steps in order for you to actually master the fundamentals and have a good solid foundation for your success later on. And so yeah, so take the courses, read their books. There's tons of books out there. I personally like to buy my books just because, you know, me paying for them out of my own pocket, it really gives that book a whole lot more importance now because I actually paid for it. And they're not that expensive. Maybe they're like 20 bucks. And so 20 bucks going out of my pocket that can go to something else. It's going to a book. I better go and read that book and actually pay attention to what I'm reading in the book. Sure, there is the library. If you don't have the budget, then of course go to the library, get free books. There's always things like YouTube here where you can learn tons of things. And yeah, but do what you can, but always try to take advice from people who inspire you. People who, you know, you read their journey and you're like, wow, that is amazing. And then you like the way that they successfully took that on and they did something amazing with it. You're inspired, you're motivated by what they've done, and you want to do something similar. That's who you should be taking advice from, not from your friends, because your friends are your friends. They're not necessarily the best advice givers, to be honest. They're probably the worst, to be honest, actually, because they're giving you bad advice. As opposed to no advice. You know, if you try to figure this thing out all on your own, you'd probably be better off than you taking advice from your friends, because your friends most likely will give you bad advice and they'll take you in the wrong direction, which later when you find out what the good advice is, you're gonna have to reverse all the things that you did in the bad action to come back to a more neutral state, and then start implementing the things that are actually gonna help you go in the right direction. As opposed to you just figuring it out, reading books and taking courses, you're most likely to go in the right direction at that point and actually get somewhere where you're more guaranteed to actually succeed in whatever it is that you're pursuing. So always from a place of inspiration, never from friendships or significant other. They're there for that. They're not there to give you advice. All right, so now we move on to the success rate and reputation. So this is what I was talking about earlier. This kind of goes hand in hand with the inspiration part, but always check the success rate of the person that you're taking advice from. You know, how often have they been successful at what you're trying to be successful at? Because obviously advice is all about you fixing or improving something. So how successful have they been at actually fixing something that you want to fix or improving something that you want to fix? So we're going to take an example of the infamous Kobe Bryant, right? So Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. You know, he was very good at what he did, right? And there were certain moves in basketball that were really good and that he truly mastered. And so look at the success rate, you know, look at how many times he's actually succeeded. Maybe there's a specific move that you want to learn. So look at how many times he's actually succeeded at that one specific move. Like how many times has he done it and what's his success rate? You know, obviously, if his success rate is like 90 to 95%, obviously nobody's 100%, nobody gets everything right all the time. And so, but if it's like around 80, 90% success rate, then they're probably a good person to take advice from, because their success rate is pretty high when they're doing the one thing that you're trying to do really well, you know, because you're trying to attain the same success rate as that. You're trying to attain an 80 to 90% success rate whenever you're trying to do anything. And so why would you take advice from somebody's success rate who's like 10, 20%? You know, that just means that that person is just not practicing enough. They're not doing enough. And so that's why their success rate is so low, because that 10, 20% success rate is most likely them just getting lucky. That's not even practice anymore. That's just them getting lucky. Obviously, if you try something multiple times, eventually you're going to get lucky enough to, you know, one of them is going to pop, is going to actually succeed. But that doesn't mean that you're good. That just means you got lucky. So that's your little 10% right there of success rate. And so that's not the people you want to be taking advice from, because their success rate is shit. It's really bad. You don't want that. You want to be taking advice from people's success rate who's very high. So 80 to 90%. And of course, look at the reputation as well. You know, what are other people saying about these people? Because obviously you don't want to be taking advice from somebody whose reputation is bad, from somebody who, you know, people just don't necessarily look up to, they don't respect them. They're just not, there's somebody that, you know, people think that they're fake, that they're scams, that they're, you know, this and that, they're not really real and stuff like that. The reputation is bad like that, like people are just saying bad things about them. You don't want to be taking advice from those people. You want to stay away from them, because, you know, if the majority of the people, you know, you can calculate this in percentages as well. So, you know, if their reputation is maybe 80% of them are saying that they're bad, and then 20% are saying that they're good, it's probably not a good person to be taking advice from, because the percentage of the reputation is very low. That means that they themselves are not taking care of their reputation. So that means that they themselves don't even care what they're doing. And so because of that, why would you think they even care about teaching you anything if they don't even care about their own reputation? And yes, you know, sometimes someone's reputation can get altered by external forces, but obviously you want to check how their response is when they get tested in such a way. And so, because everybody wants to protect their reputation, if they actually care about what they do, if they know that they're putting out something good out there, they're putting out nice, good value for people, they obviously want to protect their reputation, because a lot of people check reputation, and so they want to make sure that it's good. That way people actually take their advice and listen to them, because they know they have the goods, they know they can genuinely help people fix or improve something. So because of that, they'll make sure that their reputation is on point. That way people trust them. And so you want to be checking that reputation as well. Obviously, if it's an online person, that's very easy to do. You just do a few Google searches and you'll end up seeing what the reputation is. You know, you can go on these people's videos, social medias, look at the comments, look at the, you know, engagement, how people are responding. You can look at reviews for their courses, reviews for their books, their products, things like that. You can see how people are talking about them. You can look at other people's reactions to them. On YouTube, you know, there's always like, you know, somebody talking about the other person and stuff like that. So you always want to be aware of that. That's very important. And so yeah, always check the person's reputation and always check the person's success rate. All right, and the last one, the last piece of advice that you don't want to be taking is egocentric advice. So egocentric advice is pretty much advice that is really coming from the ego, right? So it's just somebody who, you know, they're trying to feel superior to you. So they try to give you advice that's about them. So advice that, you know, it's really about them. It's really about what they would do if they were in the position that you are, right? It's not about, because here's the thing about advice. Advice requires a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding, and a lot of listening. So if they're not doing that, if they're not actually listening to you, they're not necessarily, they don't understand your story, they don't understand what you've gone through, then they can't possibly give you advice, because what they would do is not the same thing as what you would do, because the stories are very different. You know, the place that they're coming from is very different. Like I said, every piece of advice could be good, but, you know, it has to be applied in the right place, in the right circumstances, in the right place and time. Because if it's applied in the wrong time, it's not going to work. It's not going to be as effective. It's not going to do anything. And most likely the person won't even feel motivated to go and try that advice, because it's just bad. It's just bad all around. It's bad timing. And so obviously part of giving good advice is actually good timing. It's actually knowing when it's the right time. And so people who are very egocentric, who give advice from an ego standpoint, they feel like they know everything. And so because of that, they'll go and give you advice, but they're not really giving you advice. What they're giving you is an opinion. It's giving you something, it could either be a theory or it could be something around those lines where, you know, they want to sound like they know what they're talking about. They want to sound like they're being helpful. They want to sound like, you know, they got you, but they don't really got you. They don't really got you. They don't got you because they don't understand what the hell they're talking about. You know, they might to some degree know what you're talking about, but because they haven't actually listened to you, they don't understand the place that you're coming from. They don't understand what you've been through. They don't understand your fears. They don't understand your motivations in life. They're assuming all of these things. It's just not going to be effective advice, because all the advice that they're giving is most likely other opinions or something they read somewhere, or it's something that they would do if they were in that position, and that's very bad. Okay, when you're giving advice, you never want to tell the other person, you never want to give advice to the other person about something that you would do, because it's not about you. Advice is always about the other person. It's always about helping the other person. It's about making the other person, making it click for them. So if you don't make it click for them, then it's just not going to be good. It's just not going to be good advice, because they themselves will not go and take action. And that's really bad, because it's action that actually does something. It's action that actually makes things happen. If there's no action happening, then it's over. It's over. And so I hate this type of advice. It's really bad. So don't listen to people who are very egoistic and they just want to give you advice just because they have a mouth and they can give you some good opinions and some good theories, because they're just bad. They're just bad. Not saying that they're bad people, even though there might be some of that, but they're just bad at giving advice. And so, yeah. So anyway, these are just a few things, the ones that I thought were like the most, the ones that really, like, you know, they really like lit me up, you know, when I did this just past month, because I saw these the most. And yeah, I mean, but if you want to learn more in depth as to what advice you should be taking and which one you shouldn't be taking, then read my book, Stop Taking Bad Advice. I wrote that myself during the pandemic, during the lockdown, and I find that book to be very helpful. I actually put a ton of ideas over there. I know this video here went pretty long, but if you read the book will go even a little bit deeper and it will be longer. I didn't want to go into everything because this video would just get very, very long. And so, yeah, if you want to download that book, there'll be a link down below. And if you want to listen to the audiobook version of that book as well, which I read myself, you can also find it down below. And that'll be awesome if you want to learn about all the ways that I believe you should not be taking advice from, all the places you shouldn't be taking advice from, and which is why the book is called Stop Taking Bad Advice, because bad advice is just the worst. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching this video. Really appreciate it. If you have any comments, make sure you leave them down below. If you have any opinions, leave them down below. If you have any advice, do not leave it down below. And other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys enjoyed the new setting here. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button. Thank you very much. I'll see you. Peace.